A crossover miniseries was launched a few months ago between the Masters of the Universe and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchises. The miniseries was inspired by a very successful toy line from Mattel, but there is much more history behind the project. A history that was completely altered by the mini-comics that came out with the toys. Today, I will explore the mini-comic story of the first 4 waves of Turtles of Grayskull and how it connects, or doesn't, to the Dark Horse Comics miniseries. Our story begins in 2019. At the time, DC Comics still had the Masters of the Universe, MOTU for short, license. Artist Freddie E. Williams II was approached by a DC editor who asked if he was interested in a crossover between MOTU and TMNT, planned for late 2019 or early 2020. Being a huge TMNT fan and artist, Freddie agreed and suggested Tim Seeley as the writer. The two had recently worked together on similar projects, crossing MOTU with Injustice. Freddie's reasoning was that Tim's visual writing style was easier to translate to the page. Tim and Freddie began brainstorming the project, but it was unlikely to meet the early 2020 deadline. The timing also wasn't right for Viacom or Mattel for unspecified brand awareness reasons. This didn't stop Freddie from working on concept designs based on their shared story ideas. The crossover would have aligned with the classic team-up formula. The Turtles and Shredder would find themselves on planet Eternia, encountering the MOTU cast. Shredder and Skeletor would team up against the heroes, and Leonardo would wield his own version of He-Man's power sword, presented in 2 halves as an homage to the 1982 release of He-Man. We would have also seen our heroes fight against the Shredditor, a mix between Shredder and Skeletor. The project was greenlit in 2020, but was cancelled days later, apparently due to the pandemic. By 2021, DC lost the MOTU license to Dark Horse Comics, which immediately began exploring the MOTU Revelation universe. With the project seemingly dead, Freddie shared his concept designs with fans. This may or may not have influenced later events. In 2023, Mattel's Rob David reached out to Freddie to collaborate on a new TMNT/MOTU crossover toy line. Freddie was asked to create the art for the accompanying mini-comics. As you can imagine, nothing from Tim and Freddie's project was reused for the mini-comic. The new storyline was written by Robert Rudman, with Freddie's art based on the toy designs. Freddie was directed to make the Turtles resemble the Playmates toys of the late 80s, resulting in a more cartoony style. The first 4 waves of the Turtles of Grayskull toy line shared one storyline, introducing the new toys and connecting the 2 franchises. The 2024 Dark Horse Comics miniseries would later spin off from this story, which I'll come back to later. This story began in Dimension X. Krang discovered the existence of Castle Grayskull, a fortress built around the spark of power that gave birth to time and space, and the planet Eternia. Since the castle was an impenetrable keep of infinite mysteries, it was crucial to protect it from chaos and evil. To Krang, the power of Grayskull was the key to his conquest. But he wasn't the only one seeking it. On Eternia, Skeletor summoned his henchmen to announce he had sensed a new power entering their universe. Using his arcane magic, Skeletor attempted to capture it before it could merge with Grayskull's power. This new power turned out to be a bridge to another universe. Skeletor's actions dragged Shredder, Krang, the Turtles, April, and Casey to Eternia. While April and Casey landed at Castle Grayskull, the villains arrived at the Swamp of Gangoon. Skeletor met Shredder and Krang there, and upon discovering the ooze, realized it could be the key to defeating He-Man. Meanwhile, the paradimensional alarm at the Eternian Palace signaled a disruption at the swamp. He-Man, Mossman, and Ram-Man went to investigate, but they never returned. Days later, Teela, Duncan, and Roboto ventured to the swamp, encountering a mutated Trapjaw, now Mousejaw. Roboto deduced the ooze in the water caused Trapjaw's mutation, but this didn't explain the swarm of mousers that attacked them. Luckily, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles appeared, defeating the mousers while the Eternian heroes dealt with Mousejaw. After introductions, the heroes discovered the Turtles and the ooze were from another dimension. Donatello noticed the mutagen was unlike their usual ooze. This was a mutated mutagen. Duncan offered to help the Turtles return home, but first, they needed to stop Skeletor and Shredder. Inspired by the Turtle shells, Duncan created new shell armor for everyone and let Donatello upgrade Roboto into Metal Botto, an Eternian version of Metalhead. Mikey contributed by introducing pizza to Eternia. You're welcome, Eternians. It turned out that Donnie was onto something there. The mutagen was a combination of Dimension X ooze with Skeletor's arcane arts. The villains used it to transform He-Man into a fierce purple henchman. Just like the Turtles acquired new armor, Shredder and Krang also dressed up for the occasion. The Turtles were unaware of He-Man's transformation until Beastman arrived at their doorstep. After being captured, Beastman revealed how Skeletor had summoned him, Merman, Trapjaw, and Faker to the swamp, where they found Shredder, Krang, and the Ooze. Skeletor and Krang created a portal to bring resources from Dimension X, including Leatherhead, Bebop, Rocksteady, Mousers, Mutagen, and Baxter's lab equipment. Skeletor promised to help Krang conquer his planet in exchange for assistance in taking over Eternia. But Beastman told our heroes he couldn't trust these outsiders, and after seeing what they did to He-Man, Ram-Man, Moss-Man, Trapjaw, Merman, and Faker, he realized he didn't want to go next. In desperation, he turned to the only people who could rid Eternia of these intruders. The Turtles gave Beastman samurai armor so he could lead them to the villain's hideout. Only Leo, Raph, Mikey, and Teela followed him through the tunnels underneath Eternia. As they expected, it was a trap. The team faced off against Merman, Mossman, Ram-Man, Slacker, a Slash-inspired Faker, and the evil He-Man, the most powerful mutant in the universe. However, the heroes had planned for this. They used a tracker on Beastman's armor to rescue their comrades with Metal Boto's help. With access to the mutagen, Duncan had plans to reverse engineer it to restore He-Man, but time was short. Teela suggested going to Castle Grayskull, as this was the perfect place to find answers to unknown mysteries. Inside Castle Grayskull, the Turtles were surprised to find Casey and April. Unlike them, Casey and April had awoken inside the castle. April was drawn to a mystical voice and emerged from a crystal blue pool as a sorceress. The original sorceress explained April was key to ending the ooze plague. They needed to travel beneath Castle Grayskull to the Dwell of Souls to find the whereabouts of the Sword of Power, which they would need to return He-Man to normal. When He-Man sensed he was about to lose, he threw his sword far away to a place outside the sorceress's reach. The Turtles, April, and Casey found the Dwell of Souls. Unfortunately, April was very new to her mystical powers and didn't know what to do. The Turtles started meditating, as Master Splinter always taught them this was a way for answers to come to them. This somehow activated April's powers, and soon they all received a visit from Master Splinter. Well, the spirit of Grayskull in the form of Splinter, whom the Turtles immediately nicknamed Splinter Skull. Splinter Skull gave them the location of the sword. It was on the Forgotten Island, a place with no memory. When they found the sword, they realized they were being followed by the bad guys. In a climactic moment, Leo and He-Man both grasped the Sword of Power, transporting them back to Grayskull with He-Man fully restored. But things weren't so aligned on the villain front. Shredder pledged allegiance to Hordak after seeing how ineffective Skeletor and Krang were. Using the Shrouds of Shapeshifting to pass as Leatherhead and a recaptured evil He-Man, a Turtle and He-Man infiltrated the Ooze Pit at Snake Mountain. Once in there, He-Man used his Sword of Power to return his friends to normal, including Roboto, who was in the process of being mutated. In the commotion, Bebop and Rocksteady got thrown into the Ooze Pit, where Too Bad was being mutated. This turned them into Two Bobsteady. On the other side, Skeletor and Krang started their attack on Castle Grayskull, threatening to mutate all of Eternia into their minions if the Masters of the Universe didn't surrender the castle to them. After a couple of hours of listening to Skeletor ramble on about his motivations, reinforcements arrived. He-Man, the Turtles, Ram-Man, Moss-Man, and Roboto. It was during this battle that Skeletor realized his mutated henchmen weren't following his orders at all. It was then revealed that Krang had been the only one controlling them all along. More Masters of the Universe joined the fight against the expanded cast of mutated villains. But the final blow to Krang was delivered by none other than the Shredder and Hordak duo. The two masterminds took advantage of all the distractions to use the Spirit of Grayskull cannon on top of Castle Grayskull. Having accomplished what he wanted, Hordak started mutating everyone on the battlefield. This was interrupted by the Spirit of Grayskull, who saved all of them with his power, even separating Bebop and Rocksteady. With the menace over and the villains defeated, the Turtles were finally ready to return home, back to their master Splinter. And that was the story of the mini-comics for the first 4 waves of characters. The comics were included with the Leonardo, He-Man, Donatello, Man-at-Arms, Ram-Man, Beast-Man, Raphael, Shredder, Michelangelo, Skeletor, Teela, Casey Jones, April O'Neil, Hordak, Stealth Ninja Leonardo, and Stealth Ninja He-Man action figures. During this period, there were some exclusive releases that didn't contain a comic. 2 Bobsteady, Krang, Leatherhead, Merman, Mossman, Mousejaw, Slacker, and Splinter Skull. 4 of these figures allowed you to build a figure, Metal Bato. The toy line was so successful that it doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. Based on the popularity of this new universe, Mattel decided to make Freddy's dream come true by getting a 4-issue miniseries through Dark Horse Comics. The new book is oriented to a PG-13 audience and reunites Freddy with Tim Seeley. Mattel suggested they could ignore the story from the mini-comics for their new adventure. However, Tim considered he could find a way to tell their story without undoing what the mini-comics did, taking advantage of all the new characters that made the toy line popular. If you want to know how he achieved this, check out the ongoing miniseries ending in January 2025. The story will also be collected in June 2025. As for the mini-comics, there are more waves coming out in 2025, now with the branding of Reptile Wars. These figures will come with a mini-comic introducing the new figures, which are already out for pre-order and should start hitting the shelves in January. And yes, Freddy will return for the art. So, did you buy any of these figures? Are you a MOTU and TMNT fan? Let me know your thoughts on how this childhood dream came true. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.